At the end of the evening, Mark said, "I hope we can do this again." "Yes. I would like that." "What's your favorite thing to do, Kelly?" "I enjoy soccer games." "Do you like soccer?" A blank look came over Mark's face. Yes. I love it." He's such a poor liar, Kelly thought. A mischievous idea came into her head. "There's a championship game Saturday night. Would you like to go?" Mark swallowed and said weakly, "Sure." "Great." Asterisk asterisk asterisk. When the evening was over and they arrived back at Kelly's apartment building, Kelly found herself tensing. This was always the moment for. "How about a good night kiss? Why don't I come in for a bit, and we'll have a nightcap?" "You don't want to spend the night alone? Fighting off the pawing?" As they reached Kelly's door, Mark looked at her and said, "Do you know what I first noticed about you, Kelly?" Kelly held her breath. "Here it comes." "You have a great ass." "I love your boobs." "I'd like to have your long legs wrapped around my neck." "No," Kelly said icily. "What did you first notice?" "The pain in your eyes." And before she could reply, Mark said, "Good night." And Kelly watched him leave. Chapter 13. When Mark arrived on Saturday night, he brought another box of candy and a large paper bag. "The candy is for you. The treats are for Angel." Kelly took the bags. "I thank you, and Angel thanks you." She watched Mark petting Angel and asked innocently, "Are you looking forward to the game?" Mark nodded and said enthusiastically, "Oh, yes." Kelly smiled. "Good. So am I." She knew that Mark had never even seen a soccer game. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The Paris Saint-Germain stadium was packed to capacity, with 67,000 eager fans waiting for the championship game between Lyon and Marseille to begin. As Kelly and Mark were ushered to their seats directly above midfield, Kelly said, "I'm impressed. These seats are hard to get." Mark smiled and said, "When you love soccer as much as I do, nothing is impossible." Kelly bit her lip to keep from laughing. She could not wait for the game to begin. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. At 1400 hours, both teams entered the stadium, standing at attention while the band played La Marseillaise, the French national anthem. As the lineups for Lyon and Marseille faced the stands for introductions, a player for Lyon stepped forward, wearing the Lyon logo in the team colors of blue and white. Kelly decided to relent and let Mark know what was happening. She leaned toward him. "That's their goalie," Kelly explained. "Yes, I know," Mark said. "Gregory Coupet. He's the best goalie in the league. He won a championship against Bordeaux last April. He won a UEFA Cup and a Champion League the year before that. He's 31 years old, 6 feet tall, and weighs 180 pounds. Kelly looked at Mark in astonishment. The announcer continued. "Playing forward, Sidney Guvu. Number 14, Mark enthused. "He's incredible. Last week, against Auxerre, he scored a goal in the last minute of the game. Kelly listened in amazement as Mark knowledgeably discussed all the other players. The game began and the crowd went wild. It was a frenzied, exciting game, and goalies for both teams fought hard to keep their opponents from scoring. It was difficult for Kelly to concentrate. She kept looking at Mark, amazed by his expertise. How could I have been so wrong? In the middle of a play, Mark exclaimed, "Guv was going for a flick kick. He made it." A few minutes later, Mark said, "Watch. Carrier's going to be fined for handling the ball." And he was right. When Lyon won, Mark was euphoric. What a great team. As they were leaving the stadium, Kelly asked, "Mark, how long have you been interested in soccer?" He looked at Kelly sheepishly and said, "About 3 days. I've been researching it on my computer. Since you were so interested, I thought I should learn about it." And Kelly was incredibly touched. It was unbelievable that Mark had spent so much time and effort just because she enjoyed the game. They had made a date for the following day, after Kelly finished a modeling assignment. "I can pick you up at your dressing room and no." She did not want him to meet the other models. Mark was looking at her, puzzled. "I mean, there's a rule that men aren't allowed in the dressing rooms." "Oh. I don't want you to fall in love with *******. Ladies and gentlemen, please fasten your seat belts and return your seat backs and trays to their upright and locked positions. We're approaching Kennedy Airport and will be landing in just a few minutes." Kelly was jolted back to the present. She was in New York to meet Tanner Kingsley, the man whom Mark had worked for. Someone had informed the media. When the plane landed, they were waiting for Kelly. She was surrounded by reporters with television cameras and microphones. "Kelly, would you look this way? Can you tell us what you think happened to your husband? Is there going to be a police investigation? Were you and your husband planning a divorce? Are you moving back here to the States? How did you feel when you heard what happened?" The most insensitive question of all. Kelly saw a pleasant-faced, alert-looking man standing in the background. He smiled and waved to Kelly and she motioned for him to come over to her. Ben Roberts was one of the most popular and respected talk show hosts on network television. He had interviewed Kelly before, and they had become friends. She watched as Ben made his way through the crowd of reporters. They all knew him. "Hey, Ben. Is Kelly going to be on your show? Do you think she'll talk about what happened? Can I get a picture of you and Kelly?" By this time, Ben had reached Kelly's side. The tide of reporters was pushing against them. Ben called out, "Let's give her a break, boys and girls. You can talk to her later." Reluctantly, the reporters began to give way. Ben took Kelly's hand and said, "I can't tell you how sorry I am. I liked Mark so much." "That was mutual, Ben." As Kelly and Ben made their way toward the baggage claim area, he asked, "Off the record, what are you doing in New York?" "I'm here to see Tanner Kingsley." Ben nodded. "He's a powerful man. I'm sure you'll be well taken care of." They had reached the baggage counter. "Kelly, If there is anything I can do for you, you can always reach me at the network. He looked around. Are you being picked up? If not, I'll. At that moment, a uniformed chauffeur came up to Kelly. Mrs. Harris? I'm Colin. The car is right outside. Mr. Kingsley has checked you into a suite at the Peninsula Hotel. If you'll give me your tickets, I'll attend to your luggage. Kelly turned to Ben. Will you call me? Of course. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. 10 minutes later Kelly was on her way to the hotel. As they weaved through traffic, Colin said, Mr. Kingsley's secretary will telephone you and set up an appointment. The car will be at your disposal whenever you need it. Thank you. What am I doing here? Kelly wondered. She was about to get the answer. Chapter 14. Tanner Kingsley was reading the headline of the afternoon newspaper, Hailstorm Batters Iran. The rest of the story went on to call it a freakish event. The idea of a hailstorm happening in summer, in a hot climate, was bizarre. Tanner buzzed for his secretary. When she came in, he said, Kathy, clip this article and send it to Senator Van Leuven, with the note, a global warming update. Sincerely. Right away, Mr. Kingsley. Tanner Kingsley glanced at his watch. The two detectives were due at KIG in half an hour. He looked around his extravagant office. He had created all of this. KIG. He thought about the power behind those three simple initials, and how surprised people would be if they knew the astonishing story of KIG's humble beginnings, a mere 7 years ago. The memories of the past raced through his mind. He remembered the day he had designed the new KIG logo. Pretty fancy for a nothing company, someone had said, and Tanner had single-handedly turned that nothing company into a world powerhouse. When Tanner thought about the beginnings, he felt as though he had performed a miracle. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Tanner Kingsley had been born 5 years after his brother, Andrew, and that had totally shaped the direction of his life. Their parents were divorced, and their mother had remarried and moved away. Their father was a scientist, and the boys had followed in his footsteps and had grown up to be science prodigies. Their father had died of a heart attack at age 40. The fact that Tanner was 5 years younger than his brother was a constant frustration. When Tanner won the top award in his science class, he was told, Andrew was number 1 in his class 5 years ago. It must run in the family. When Tanner won an oratorical contest, the professor said, Congratulations, Tanner. You're the second Kingsley to get this award. On joining the tennis team, I hope you're as good as your brother, Andrew. When Tanner graduated, your valedictorian speech was inspiring. It reminded me so much of Andrew's. He had grown up in the shadow of his brother, and it was galling to know that he was considered second best only because Andrew had gotten there first. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. There were similarities between the two brothers. They were both handsome, intelligent, and talented, but as they grew older, major differences became apparent. While Andrew was altruistic and self-effacing, Tanner was an extrovert, gregarious and ambitious. Andrew was shy around women, while Tanner's looks and charm drew them to him like a magnet. But the most important difference between the brothers was their goals in life. While Andrew was deeply concerned with organizing charity and assisting others, Tanner's ambition was to become rich and powerful. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Andrew graduated from college summa cum laude and immediately accepted an offer to work at a think tank. There he learned what a significant contribution an organization like that could make, and 5 years later Andrew decided to start his own think tank, on a modest scale. When Andrew told Tanner about the idea, Tanner was excited. "That's brilliant. Think tanks get government contracts worth millions, not to mention corporations that hire." Andrew interrupted. "That's not my idea, Tanner. I want to use it to help people." Tanner was staring at him. "Help people?" "Yes. There are dozens of third-world countries that have no access to modern methods of agriculture and manufacturing. There's a saying that if you give a man a fish, he can have a meal. If you teach him to fish, he can eat for the rest of his life. You could cut down an oak tree with that old saw," Tanner thought. "Andrew, countries like that can't afford to pay us." "That doesn't matter. We'll send experts to third-world countries to teach them modern techniques that will change their lives. I'm making you a partner. We'll call our think tank Kingsley Group. What do you say?" Tanner was thoughtful for a moment. He nodded. "As a matter of fact, it's not a bad idea. We can start with the kind of countries you're talking about, then go after the big money, the government contracts." "And Tanner, let's just concentrate on making the world a better place." Tanner smiled. It was going to be a compromise. They would start the way Andrew wanted to, and then they would gradually build up the company to its real potential. "Well," Tanner held out his hand. "Here's to our future, partner." 6 months later, the two brothers were standing in the rain, outside a small brick building with an unimpressive little sign that read, "How does it look?" Andrew asked proudly. "Beautiful." Tanner managed to keep the irony out of his voice. "That sign is going to bring happiness to so many people around the world, Tanner. I've already started hiring some experts to go to third-world countries." Tanner started to object and stopped. His brother could not be rushed. He had a stubborn streak. "But the time is coming. The time is coming." Tanner looked up at the little sign again and thought, someday it will read KIG, Kingsley International Group. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. John Hyolt, a college friend of Andrew's, had invested $100,000 to help get the think tank started, and Andrew had raised the rest of the money. Half a dozen people were hired and sent to Kenya, Somalia, and Sudan to teach the natives how to better their lives. But no money was coming in. It made no sense to Tanner. "Andrew, we could get contracts from some of the big companies, and that's not what we do, Tanner." "What in the hell do we do?" Tanner wondered. "The Chrysler Corporation is looking for," and Andrew smiled and said, "Let's do our real job." It took all of Tanner's willpower to control himself. Andrew and Tanner each had his own laboratory at the think tank. They were both immersed in their own projects. Andrew frequently worked far into the night. One morning, when Tanner arrived at the plant, Andrew was still there. He saw Tanner come in, and Andrew jumped to his feet. "I'm excited about this new nanotechnology experiment. I'm developing a method of..." Tanner's mind drifted to something more important, the hot little redhead he had met the night before. She had joined him at the bar, had a drink, taken him to her apartment, and given him a wonderful time. When she held his, and I think it's really going to make a difference. How does that sound, Tanner? Caught by surprise, Tanner said, "Oh. Yes, Andrew. Great." Andrew smiled. "I knew you would see its possibilities." Tanner was more interested in his own secret experiment. If mine works, he thought, I'll own the world. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. One evening, shortly after his college graduation, Tanner was at a cocktail party when a pleasant, feminine voice behind him said, "I've heard a lot about you, Mr. Kingsley." Tanner turned around in anticipation and then tried to conceal his disappointment. The speaker was an unremarkable-looking young woman. All that kept her from being plain was a pair of intense brown eyes and a bright, slightly cynical smile. The sine qua non for Tanner was the physical beauty of a woman, and it was clear that this woman didn't make the cut. Even as he said, "Nothing too bad, I hope," he was thinking up an excuse to get rid of her. "I'm Pauline Cooper. My friends call me Paula. You dated my sister Ginny in college. She was mad about you." Ginny, short, tall, dark, blonde. Tanner stood there, smiling, trying to remember. There had been so many. "Ginny wanted to marry you. That was no help. So did a lot of others. Your sister was very nice. We just didn't seem to be." She gave Tanner a sardonic look. "Save it. You don't even remember her." He was embarrassed. "Well, it's all right. I just attended her wedding." Tanner was relieved. "Ah. So, Ginny is married." "Yes, she is." There was a pause. "But I'm not. Would you like to have dinner tomorrow night?" Tanner took a closer look at her. Even though she was not up to his standards, she appeared to have a nice body and seemed pleasant enough. And this was certainly an easy lay. Tanner thought of his dates in baseball terms. He would throw a woman one pitch. That was it. If she didn't hit a home run, she was out. She was watching him. "I'll pay." Tanner laughed. "I can handle it if you're not a world-class gourmand. Try me." He looked into her eyes and said softly, "I will." Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The following evening, they dined at a trendy restaurant uptown. Paula was dressed in a cream-colored, low-cut silk blouse, a black skirt, and high-heeled shoes. As Tanner watched her stride into the restaurant, it seemed to him that she was a lot better looking than he had remembered. In fact, she had the bearing of a princess from some exotic country. Tanner stood up. "Good evening." She took his hand. "Good evening." There was a self-assured air about her that was almost regal. When they were seated, she said, "Let's start over, shall we? I have no sister." Tanner looked at her, confused. "But you told me." She smiled. "I just wanted to test your reaction, Tanner. I've heard a lot about you from some of my friends, and I became interested." Was she talking about sex? He wondered whom she had spoken to. It could have been so many. Don't jump to conclusions. I'm not talking about your swordsmanship. I'm talking about your mind. It was as though she had been reading his thoughts. So, you are interested in mines. Among other things, she said invitingly. This is going to be an easy home run. Tanner reached over and took her hand. You're really something. He stroked her arm. You're very special. We're going to have a good time together tonight. She smiled. Are you feeling horny, darling? Tanner was taken aback by her bluntness. She was an eager little thing. Tanner nodded. Always, princess. She smiled. Fine. Get out your little black book and we'll try to find someone who's available for you tonight. Tanner froze. He was used to making sport of women, but none of them had ever mocked him before. Tanner stared at her. What are you saying? That we're going to have to improve your line, love. Do you have any idea how trite it is? Tanner felt his face getting red. What makes you think it's a line? She looked him in the eye. It was probably invented by Methuselah. When you talk to me, I want you to say things that you've never said to any woman before. Tanner looked at her, trying to conceal his fury. Who does she think she's dealing with? Some high school kid? She was too damned insolent for her own good. Strike 1. The bitch is out. Chapter 15. The world headquarters of Kingsley International Group was located in Lower Manhattan, 2 blocks from the East River. The compound occupied 5 acres of land and consisted of 4 large concrete buildings, along with 2 small staff houses, fenced in and guarded electronically. At 10 o'clock in the morning, Detectives Earl Greenberg and Robert Prijitzer entered the lobby of the main building. It was spacious and modern, furnished with couches and tables, and half a dozen chairs. Detective Greenberg glanced at the assortment of magazines on a table: virtual reality, nuclear and radiological terrorism, robotics world. He held up a copy of Genetic Engineering News and turned to Prijitzer. Don't you get tired of reading these in your dentist's office? Prijitzer grinned. Yeah. The 2 detectives approached the receptionist and identified themselves. We have an appointment with Mr. Tanner Kingsley. He's expecting you. I'll have someone escort you to his office. She gave them each a KIG badge. Please turn these in when you leave. No problem. The receptionist pressed a buzzer, and a moment later, an attractive young woman appeared. These gentlemen have an appointment with Mr. Tanner Kingsley. Yes. I'm Richard Tyler, one of Mr. Kingsley's assistants. Follow me, please. The 2 detectives walked down a long, sterile corridor with tightly closed office doors on each side. At the end of the corridor was Tanner's office. In Tanner's waiting room, Kathy Ordonez, Tanner's bright young secretary, was seated behind a desk. Good morning, gentlemen. You can go right in. She got up and opened the door to Tanner's private office. As the detectives stepped inside, they stopped to stare, in awe. The huge office was crammed with arcane electronic equipment, and the soundproof walls were lined with wafer-thin television sets displaying live scenes from cities around the world. Some of the views were of busy conference rooms, offices, and laboratories, while others showed hotel suites where meetings were taking place. Each set had its own audio system, and even though the volume was barely audible, it was eerie to hear snippets of sentences spoken simultaneously in a dozen different languages. A caption appeared at the bottom of each screen identifying the cities: Milan, Johannesburg, Zurich, Madrid, Athens. At the far wall was an 8-tier bookshelf filled with leather-bound volumes. Tanner Kingsley was seated behind a mahogany desk that contained a console with half a dozen different colored buttons. He was elegantly dressed in a tailored gray suit with a light blue shirt and a blue check tie. Tanner rose as the two detectives walked in. "Good morning, gentlemen," Earl Greenberg said. "Good morning." Yes, I know who you are." Detectives Earl Greenberg and Robert Prijitzer. They shook hands. "Sit down, please." The detectives took seats. Prijitzer was staring at the swiftly changing, worldwide pictures on the profusion of television sets. He shook his head in admiration. "Talk about today's state of the art." "This is Tanner," raised a hand. "We're not talking here about today's state of the art, detective. This technology won't be on the market for another 2 or 3 years. With these, we're able to watch teleconferences in a dozen different countries simultaneously. The information that pours in from our offices around the world is automatically categorized and recorded by these computers." Prijitzer asked, "Mr. Kingsley, forgive a simplistic question. What does a think tank do, exactly?" "Bottom line? We're problem solvers. We figure out solutions to problems that may lie ahead. Some think tanks concentrate in only one area: the military or economics or politics. We deal in national security, communications, microbiology, environmental issues. KIG functions as an independent analyst and critic of long-range global consequences for various governments." "Interesting," said Prijitzer. 85% of our research staff hold advanced degrees, and more than 65% have PhDs. That's impressive. My brother, Andrew, founded this company to assist third-world countries, so we're also heavily involved in startup projects there." There was a sudden rumble of thunder and a flash of lightning from one of the television sets. They all turned to look. Detective Greenberg said, "Didn't I read something about a weather experiment you were doing?" Tanner grimaced. "Yes, it's known around here as Kingsley's Folly. It's one of the few major failures KIG ever had. It was the one project that I most hoped would work. Instead, we're closing it down." Prijitzer asked, "Is it possible to control the weather?" Tanner shook his head. "Only to a limited degree. A lot of people have tried. As long ago as 1900, Nikola Tesla was doing experiments with weather. He discovered that ionization of the atmosphere could be altered by radio waves. In 1958, our Defense Department experimented with dropping copper needles into the ionosphere. 10 years later, there was Project Popeye, where the government attempted to extend the monsoon season in Laos, to increase the amount of mud in the Ho Chi Minh Trail. They used a silver iodide nuclei agent, and generators shot banks of silver iodide into the clouds, to become seeds for raindrops. Did it work? Yes, but on a confined local basis. There are several reasons why no one will ever be able to control the weather. One problem is that El Niño creates warm temperatures in the Pacific Ocean that disrupt the world's ecological system, while La Niña creates cold weather temperatures in the Pacific, and the two of them combined completely negate any realistic weather control planning.